What's up, Gator fans? Today I'm chatting with Brandon Helwig of UCFsports.com. I'll get right to that, but I want to put some info on my Patreon this morning about what I'm hearing about Coach Napier's future, considering the results that could take place this weekend. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but I don't want you to miss it. Okay, let's chat with Brandon. Hey, Gator fans. I am here to talk about Florida UCF. I've got Brandon Helwig from Rivals.com. You have been covering UCF for a very long time, and so this is going to be great because you're a wealth of knowledge, and I just want to jump right into it.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm excited about this. UCF fans, I am never UCF's fans' favorite favorite person. So I will be interested to see what the comments of this video say because they're always a spicy fan base. But okay, so let's talk about what are your thoughts on Gus Malzahn? And this team bouncing back after last week.
It's a bit complicated, a little bit more complicated today than if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago. Gus Malzahn and kind of his view amongst the fan base right now. Just to kind of recap how he got to UCF. I guess you can see behind me we have the national championship poster. I don't think I've traded bars with you on Twitter through the years about that, but
Sure.
obviously Scott Frost, which people probably remember that era at UCF, the undefeated streak, Mackenzie Milton at quarterback, going to the Peach Bowl, beating Auburn, ending that season, and then Frost goes to Nebraska. Josh Heupel comes in, head coach, the undefeated. The wins continue to pile up in 2018 until Mackenzie Milton gets hurt. Really serious leg injury, gruesome injury at USF, and then UCF finally loses a game in the Fiesta Bowl against LSU. And Heupel continued to coach through 2020. Danny White, UCF's former AD, leaves to go to Tennessee. He has trouble hiring a football coach, I think, at that point. I think there were some names he swung and missed on. So he makes the call to his former coach at UCF and says, hey, come join me in Knoxville. I think it's worked out really well in retrospect now at Tennessee. I think it's been a good hire. But it was a late process. It was February of 2021. UCF had to hire a new AD and a new head coach. Pretty much at the same time, they hired Terry Mahajer from Arkansas State. His first job was, hey, we need a head coach. And so he went back to a guy that he had worked with briefly at Arkansas State back in the day with Gus Malzahn. He had just been fired from Auburn a couple months before. At the time, I think it was, I don't think UCF could have done it any better. I mean, you're hiring a coach. I know when I talk with you for my deal, you're talking about a coach, with Billy Napier kind of learning on the job how to compete at a big time program. Maybe his years at Louisiana for Billy Napier wasn't really enough to prepare him for what he was going to step into at Florida. And for UCF, you're getting a guy who's been, a head coach for a long time. He's been a coordinator at a high level. He's been, a head coach at Auburn. He's pretty much seen it all and been through every situation. He knows how to recruit at a high level. And I think that was an issue that going into it that UCF had kind of been lagging behind. Josh Heupel wasn't the greatest recruiter. I think even though at that time UCF wasn't, quote unquote Power Four, I think there was a feeling that they weren't recruiting as well as they probably should have. And so Gus Malzahn, he basically, UCF now and joining the Big 12, getting that Big 12 invite that happened later in 2021 has a lot to do with it too. But he's transformed UCF recruiting. It's not uncommon to see, high 4-star, 5-star guys, talking about UCF, committing to UCF, taking visits to UCF, and that just never happened before. But now just kind of fast forward to where we are now. Fans are at the point where they want to see results on the field. They want to see UCF compete for a championship. They fell short their final year in the American in 2022, lost the Conference USA or lost the conference championship game in the American to Tulane. Last year was the first year in the Big 12. Was an up and down year. Lost some games they probably should have won. Still qualified for a bowl game, which was good. But this year, it kind of, even though it's UCF still 3-1, and that's what I don't quite understand sometimes, that the fans are kind of on that ledge right now. Just kind of with the way these last two games have gone, but they're very antsy. They're very, I don't know. There's a lot of emotions going on amongst the UCF fan base, and I think this weekend will say a lot about where this UCF team is. They're technically favorites going on the road in the Swamp, which kind of surprised me after what happened last weekend. And so they want to start to see some big time wins from Gus Malzahn, and so far that hasn't happened.
We'll get right back to chatting with Brandon, but first, I want you guys to go over and check out patreon.com/Allie Peak. I updated some info on what I'm hearing UF will likely do with Napier if UF loses this game against UCF, including a possible timeline. If you're a member here on the channel, I'd say consider switching to that. Go sign up for Patreon, where I'll be dropping coaching, recruiting, staff, and program info regularly. If you just want to support, Patreon is a great way to do that as well. Again, patreon.com/Allie Peak. I appreciate all of you guys for your support. I'm really not sure if that line is more indicative of Florida or UCF, but I'm sure both fan bases are confused about that a little bit. When you guys talk about this game, though, I know last week, and we'll talk about Colorado, but last week you guys expected to win. You were 2 touchdown favorites. The environment was there at home. Do you think that UCF fans look at this game as a game that they should win, or do you think that they look at this game as like, if we snag this one, that's awesome?
I think prior to last week, at least how I was feeling, I looked at when I look at these two games, Colorado and Florida back to back. Colorado to me was the must win. It's a conference game. It's an opponent that you were 2 touchdown favorites by. Colorado is, if I think a lot of people have followed, them the last couple of years with Coach Prime, and there's just a lot of chaos around the program. Coaching changes, roster turnover, that sort of thing. If you're Gus Malzahn, this is going to be his 4th year here at UCF, and you've done a good recruiting job, and this. It should, and you're at home, and that's the thing. UCF's kind of lost their edge at home the last couple of years, which is kind of disheartening given what the home record had been. So to me, that was a must win, and I was going to look at Florida as a nice to win game, not necessarily a must win, just because you still have the Big 12. What UCF wants to accomplish this year doesn't really, this Florida game really has no bearing on it. I think UCF can get to the playoff if they win the Big 12. So obviously in that regard, Big 12 games are more important. Now with fans starting to question where UCF kind of is as a program, and it seems crazy to say because UCF's 3-1, it's only been 4 games, but I think I think there's a little bit more importance now on this game, just given where Florida is. I think going into the season, we knew it was going to be a difficult year. We knew Billy Napier was on the hot seat. I guess the season has kind of gone in order to expectation in terms of UF, and to kind of have this opportunity. This might be, I guess you could say, this might be the lowest point that maybe Florida's been in a long time. And to have this opportunity as, I know you kind of told me in my interview with you, UF kind of looks at UCF like little brother, and to have this opportunity, you're never going to get a greater opportunity to have a to be favored against a team like Florida in going into the Swamp. So yeah, I think this game, I think it's even bigger because UCF lost to Colorado, though I'm not sure if the fan base feels like that.
You talk about going into the Swamp, and I know when we talked on your show, you've been there. It was 2006, which obviously a very long time ago. Talk about the pressure of that stadium, though. I mean, it is, even if this year is not going the way Florida wants it to go, it is still an intimidating venue to play in.
Yeah, it's good that some of these guys, if we go back a couple years when UCF was in the American, there was just no atmospheres you'd go into that were intimidating whatsoever. You're playing teams like Temple, that has maybe a couple thousand fans in the stands. USF really hasn't been there the last few years. So the fact that UCF was able to go through a Big 12 schedule last year, and kind of there were some really great environments. Kansas State was one of them. Oklahoma was a great environment, Texas Tech. So at least for the guys who were here, and a lot of the transfers UCF brought in are coming from environment, like KJ Jefferson, he beat Florida in the Swamp. Ethan Barr played at Vanderbilt. Deshaun played at Cincinnati. Ladarius Tennyson played at Ole Miss. So a lot of these transfers that are playing big roles this year came from places where they've played in environments like that. So I don't think the stage will be too big. It's a little bit different than, maybe we're talking about, 20, 25 years ago in 1999 when UCF is an independent in FBS, just their 3rd or 4th season doing that and kind of having, being on, just kind of, shaking in their boots a little bit by that environment. I don't think they should be intimidated, but I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens on Saturday.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of the matchups in this game. Florida's offensive line is not great, but they're probably at least as good, if not better, than Colorado's. What are your thoughts on how that matches up with UCF's D line?
Oh, I mean, you said we thought the defensive line. I mean, if you're going to poll everyone before the season and say, look at UCF's defense, what will be the strength going in? I think I would have said the defensive line. I would have had some question marks about DN, but the interior guys are experienced. Ricky Barber has been at UCF for pretty much Gus Malzahn's entire tenure. Lee Hunter was a transfer from Auburn. You know, he's should be an impact player. I know they do have an injury with John Walker, top recruit. He hasn't played so far this season. But the pass rush, UCF has pretty much had a non-existent pass rush. They have not gotten to the quarterback well at all. And so that's interesting. You say Florida's offensive line is a weakness. UCF's D line has underperformed. Their pass rush has been a weakness. Something's got to give on Saturday to see who gets the best of that matchup. So that's kind of the theme so far. I think I know we'll talk about offense in a minute. When we look at defense, a lack of a pass rush, and we thought, UCF did bring in. It's kind of just going to give you this big picture view of defense. Gus was not satisfied, was not happy at all with the way the defense played that last year, the first year in the Big 12. So he made a change at coordinator, bringing in Ted Roof, who I feel like has coached almost every college football team when you look at how many places he's been through the years. But he's an experienced guy. Gus worked with him at Auburn during their 2010, I think it was, national championship when Gus was OC and Roof was DC. Brought in him to implement some changes. And brought in a lot of transfers that on paper have a lot of experience. They've gotten it done at a high level at their previous places, but so far it hasn't. I know it's only two P4 games UCF has played, but it hasn't translated yet. The secondary has been average at best. They were shredded by TCU's quarterback and Shadir Sanders at Colorado last week. So we're all kind of wondering, if the defense has really improved from last season or not.
Okay, let's talk about the other side of the ball. UF's defensive line has also been a disappointment this season. How do you think they'll do against UCF's offensive line?
Well, I think you said it, and I know a lot of people have said it. Colorado may have given teams the blueprint on how to defend UCF last week. I think going into it, UCF was going to lean on the running game. RJ Harvey, even though last week was kind of an underperforming game for him, he still did. His stat line was still fairly good. I don't have it in front of me. I think he's rushed for about 80 yards. He had 70-something yard touchdown reception as well. He's UCF's best player on offense. I mean, the offense should kind of go through RJ Harvey running the ball. KJ Jefferson has been, I guess you could say, hot and cold. The thing about KJ, I mean, this is his 5th year. He's played at Arkansas. He was a 3-year starter there. I mean, he's played against great teams, great environments. His first game here against New Hampshire, season opener on a Thursday night. I mean, I don't know if I've seen a worse quarterback performance at UCF. It's been a long time. I mean, he was terrible. I mean, there's really no sugarcoating it. I know they try to say it was first game jitters or whatnot. He couldn't hit the side of a barn. I mean, there's wide open receivers. He's throwing it in the dirt 5 yards away. It was terrible. To his credit, he played a lot better the next week against Sam Houston, and he turned it on. And I mean, he did well at TCU when UCF's backs were against the wall. I mean, that looked like it was going to be a blowout loss for UCF. Yeah. They were down big at halftime, big early in the third quarter. They came back and won that game pretty much by sticking to what, they didn't panic. They weren't trying to throw the ball every down. That's not UCF's offense. They got to get that running game going and stick to the plan. And they did that against TCU, enabling them to come back. Last week, I think, against Colorado, they got down and they got away from that. They got away from utilizing RJ Harvey. They got down in the red zone, and I don't know what they were doing. UCF's not been a good red zone team, but they need to stick to trying to get the run game going with RJ Harvey, even if they get down. I think that's going to be their blueprint to success on Saturday.
Let's talk about Florida's offense a little bit. You and I talked about this earlier today, but 2 quarterbacks. How do you think UCF's preparing for that, and how do you think that could impact this game?
Yeah, it's interesting because I haven't. You're the Florida expert, not me, so I don't really. I haven't been watching every play of every game, but I think you said that Coach Napier he scripts when each quarterback is going to get action, which is interesting. I think I don't know. I would think most coaches might do it the other way. Maybe you kind of have a plan going into it, and then maybe at least by the time you get to the second half, you kind of would roll with the hot hand. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see. I would say if I'm UCF, I'm more leery of Graham Mertz, just because what he can do from a passing standpoint. He's probably more similar to TCU's quarterback, and he was pretty much able to pick apart and move down the field against UCF. Um, that's the matchup I have my eye on. Lagway is a true freshman. I know he's got a tremendous upside. He's got a great future. If I'm Florida, I'm probably sticking with Graham Mertz because I think he has, based on UCF's defense the last two games, I think he has more of the skill set to kind of pick apart UCF than Lagway does. But we'll see with Coach Napier how he decides to roll with those guys.
What worries you the most about UF?
Kind of like what I just said, is that the fact that I think UCF's defense, be it their lack of a pass rush and some of the cornerback play not being able to, cover receivers, and there was some, head scratching play. I know Colorado, they got great individual talent. I mean, Shadir Sanders is going to be a top draft pick. Travis Hunter, honestly, I think he will be a Heisman candidate. They've got some great individual players, on that team, but there's just some head scratching plays from the corners, opportunities to break up passes where they're just kind of looking at the receiver gets the ball for a touchdown and some things. So that's the matchup I'm most concerned. I think if Florida's going to win this game, it's going to be through the air, likely with Graham Mertz having success throwing the ball. That's kind of my biggest concern.
Where are you the most confident that UCF can take advantage of UF?
I think this is cliche because I think you could say this about every game, but I think if UCF can kind of settle down and get into a groove early, establish that running game, put together a long drive, kind of impose their will on UF, where we know Florida has documented issues stopping the run. If say they can, whether whoever gets the ball first, if they can, start off with a long drive and end it with the touchdown, take some time off that clock, RJ Harvey rack up a lot of yards. If they can do that, I'll feel a lot better about this game. With the UCF's defenses issues stopping the pass and giving up points this year, like 40-something points average between the last two games. I think it's very important for UCF to start out strong, particularly with that running game.
All right, before I let you go, do you have a prediction on this one?
I haven't really. You're putting me on the spot. I'm going to come up with it right now. I'm not. I think I was feeling a lot better about this game prior to Colorado. I also maybe bought into Vegas going into Colorado. I thought UCF was going to win, similarly to how Vegas saw it, which was a 14-point favorite. So my impressions and my expectations and have kind of changed a little bit since that game. I'm more worried about Florida than maybe I would have been prior to that game. It's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be. I think it'll be, like I said, it'll turnovers. That obviously, and that applies to every game. But I'm biased. I'm a homer. You're a homer, Allie. So I can't pick against UCF. I'm going to go UCF 31, Florida 28.
All right. You guys heard it here first. Before we let you go, where can folks follow you and find your work?
UCFsports.com, part of the Rivals Network. I've been around for what? Oh, gosh. I'm dating myself now, but about 25 years covering UCF, and you can find me on Twitter at UCF Sports.
All right. Well, Brandon, we appreciate your time today, and hopefully you have fun on Saturday, win or lose.
All right. I appreciate it, Allie. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Thanks again to Brandon for joining me. Remember, go sign up at patreon.com/Allie Peak to not only support the channel, but also stay updated on what's going on behind the scenes at UF. I appreciate you all for your support. And as always, go Gators.